all around. And a synthesis accepts, welcomes, celebrates it all. See, there was no democracy like we have in the United States of America. So when politics was what Aristotle was dealing with, he didn't go that far. Right? There's all that stuff about contract that John Locke developed in England. There's all of those things that we have added on to it, and yet they fit. That's a very neat additional set of steps within the political process. It's an activity that fits together. So we can have divisions of power that didn't used to exist. We can have elections. We can have hanging chads and all that kind of stuff. We can do all of that stuff and make it fit together. That's the mark of synthesis. Whereas if you're dealing with something like Plato, his own ideas don't fit together, and he's not happy with them. There's no synthesis there. And then other things don't fit very well. If you start talking about, well, let's investigate politics, why? Because that's an illusion. And you can't build on something like what Plato had. So Aristotle provides us with the first synthesis that we have seen in philosophy. It's a very rare and wonderful thing. You're all invited to study it, but basically we're finished with our little review of it. You have any last words for that part of it, for the synthesis? Yes.
Brother, I beg your pardon, but you're destroying my thoughts here.
You were celebrating Plato.
I find that you're reducing us to actors, and is that what's happening here? There's no more writers, there's no more, we're all actors, or what?
Well, writing is an act, right? So it's included. Painting is an act, so it's included. Dancing is an act. See, act leaves nothing out. Now, where does man fit into this? What Aristotle does is to point out that as the man develops, he does sort of climb a ladder. And Aristotle develops the sense in which there are virtues and how you could do these virtues. And he says that as you are doing the virtues, you are acting. And as you are acting on more, bigger, better things, so you're getting closer to the pure act. And the most important acts that you perform are thinking and loving. And as you think more up toward the one, you find that what you are thinking about is better. And because it's better, you love it more. And there is an integration of your thinking and your loving. And that's exactly what Plato meant by contemplation. But Aristotle, because he's into the activity, and the activity is more revealing than the mere concepts, he's able to show that as you know more, you can know that it's better, and you love the better more. So your knowing and your loving integrate into one unified act. And Aristotle points out, when you're doing that, little things like the noises in the marketplace don't matter. So you come to understand how Socrates could stand for 24 hours in the marketplace, because he was so integrated. His activity was so intense that the other things didn't bother him. He said, now, everybody can do this. Aristotle is also very empirical, and he knows hardly anybody does it, but everybody can. And this is the way that he works the process through. From simple little things, learning how to be less distracted. If you say, I'm going to study this little handout that Brother Brian provided, I'm going to study it for an hour. Well, 5 minutes into it, you're busy doing something else. Right? Aristotle says, don't worry about that. Just go back and put in 6 minutes. Right? The next day, put in 7 minutes. The day after that, put in 8 minutes. See, once he discovers that it's a matter of activity, then the mystery is gone from it. All you need to do is be a little bit more active, and a little bit more active, and a little bit more active, and you add to it. You say, well, what about, I got it up to 10 minutes, and then the day after that, I didn't do any at all. Well, that's a bit of a problem, but no big deal. Maybe you start over with 7 minutes, and you build up. First thing you know, you do it at 15 minutes. That's the activity to pursue. That's the way to go at it. So the Aristotelian approach makes it more available to everyone.
What's the it that you do for 6 minutes or 7 minutes?
Yeah, you concentrate. You pay attention to. And at the beginning, it would be just reading. You just read through something. Okay? And if you can concentrate upon reading through it a little bit more each day, then you are getting ready to spend some time thinking about it independently. You say, well, gee, I tried that for 2 minutes and it almost drove me crazy. 2.5 the next day. Now, he wrote all of that stuff up in a book called Ethics that he dedicated to his son Nicomachus. So it's frequently called the Nicomachean Ethics. And he shows that this is really what people should be doing, contemplation. Now, he taught that ethics to Alexander the Great. But Alex didn't pay any attention to it. He went out and conquered the world instead. So according to Aristotle, he flunked ethics. Where it really counts, in the act. Right? Not in the memorization, not in the writing down the answers to questions, but in acting out the life. Alex flunked ethics.
Just that you mentioned this Clinton image, you mentioned again Aristotle and his relationship with then Clinton. This gentleman was raised by a woman who said his father wasn't his father. He was really born by a god. He never got to see his father. It was war. It was like Saddam Hussein. It was assassination. He grew in a world of assassination, and he was driven by being the best killer in the world. I mean, he had nightmares about maybe his father would kill everybody and rule the world before him. So I mean, how do you deal with, these Clinton types? Clinton also was raised by a single mother who told him a bunch of alcoholic nonsense. And somehow these talented human beings survive, but they survive perverted. I mean, how do you apply this to this 20th century read on
Right.
this
Well,
monster?
what you have to do is be kind to Clinton.
And Alexander the Great.
And Alex, too. Yeah.
He killed people in a way that made Hitler look like a saint.
Right.
You're kind to them?
Yeah,
Yes.
you have to be kind to
Buddhist
them.
concept.
Right? Because your first responsibility is to yourself. See, you don't really have any responsibility for William Jefferson Clinton. See, you have a responsibility for yourself. And you have to do the most godly thing that you can do. Right? And it doesn't mean beating him up. Right? Much as you may be inclined to do so. Right? It doesn't mean insulting him. It doesn't mean, well, you make jokes about him, right? But you wouldn't want to aggravate him because that makes him worse. But the only criminal you're really responsible for is yourself. And it makes you worse. See? So if you become a criminal in order to punish a criminal, see, then both lose. Everything is worse at the end of this than before.
As in the execution of Mr. McVeigh.
See, these days, when you can warehouse criminals for a lifetime, execution is no longer required. One of the big problems would be that he might get parole in 10 or 15 years and blow up some other government building. Right? So in order to protect people from being blown to bits, you might want to keep them away from fertilizing.
The dominating, but my sin is that every time I hear Clinton and his father Reagan talk, I just admire their trickery, their skill. He knows how to win in a world that overwhelms me, and he didn't get knocked out. And to get back to Aristotle's support of this monster, both of these guys could say at the end of their lives, they did good. This man created a library. He spread these Greek ideas. The last thing Clinton said when he had his extra party was, didn't we do good? I didn't have a clue what he was talking about, but he believed that he had done good. And yet, both of these guys were the way they got there needed some, as you were just saying, Aristotle didn't exactly get listened to. He may have gotten used by this man.
You see, Aristotle taught Alexander logic. And Alexander used logic to conquer the world. But Aristotle also taught him how to live well. That conquering the world doesn't help you contemplate God. It doesn't help you to move from these little acts up to the pure act. It doesn't help you to activate your spirituality to the max. In fact, it gets in the way of doing that. So, Aristotle did all he could, but Alex used his freedom to throw the ethics away and to do what he thought would make him happy. It didn't make him happy. It didn't do a lot of good, although there was some good that happened. See, that's the nice thing about not being perfect. We can't even be perfectly evil. So even something that Clinton did, mostly by accident, turns out to be good. Something that Alex the Great did turns out to be good. Because we aren't. So what we need to do is to contemplate God as much as we can. Winning political battles is simply not important. It's not a part of contemplating the truth. It's a kind of distraction. It leads into some excitement. You might be able to do it. You might be elected president. But even then, when you get to be president, if you're not contemplating, you have missed your point. A lot of very unhappy presidents. So this is a very neat way to consider it. This is what Aristotle proposes for us. And on the one hand, it's simple, it's right there, it's in the activity itself. We can follow it. On the other hand, it requires us to act. It requires us to take a responsibility to get out there and do these things. If we do that, then we get some